Hanging with you guys, always.
So UFC 220 this weekend. I know you've done a deep dive on Frencis Ngannou now. I'm starting to think that Francis might be in over his head a little bit. Now, hear me out. Stipe made a point that, everybody in the heavyweight division hits, to an extent as hard as Francis Ngannou. If you start thinking about Ngannou on the ground, there's really nothing there, that we've seen. So now you've got a guy like Stipe who really has a great wrestling pedigree. He's got fantastic footwork, fantastic technical striking. He really could dictate the pace of this fight.
For sure. And there's a second layer to that I think would concern me if I'm Francis Ngannou fan or his people. And that is, if we get into that scenario, the way he uses energy, he's very much a fast twitch athlete, right? Like just ultra fast twitch athlete. And guys like that, you intentionally train them a particular way to create that kind of explosiveness in short bursts. And it's not... I used to believe this was an overstated thing, that these types of athletes burn out when they start to grind. So I talked to somebody named Dr. Stu McGill, who is the highest level neuro specialist in the nervous systems of athletes. He studied them all. And he said that it's not overstated at all. In fact, you purposefully train an athlete like Francis Ngannou to explode for 30-second bursts over a few minutes, and you purposefully avoid forcing him to grind too much in the gym. You're forcing him to exhaust himself because you actually alter muscle fibers, nervous systems. You alter the athlete.
It'll take a toll on him eventually as well, right? The first thing with my strength and what people do, if you, for example, train every day the same thing, you're not giving that nervous system a break. And that's why they say those rest periods are really important, right? Because you're basically not giving your nervous system a chance to recover. So it makes a lot of sense.
So Stipe, you train him like a sprinter. You train him in short bursts of high volume activity. And then you may say to yourself, well, wouldn't it be great? How do we prepare him for rounds 4 and 5? Well, if we do that too much, we start to dig into the things that make him so explosive. So for him to be as fast, explosive, fast twitch, sudden as he is, he, by definition, will not perform well in rounds 3, 4, and 5. He just won't. Not like we've seen anyways.
And you're saying he's saying more genetic basis, right? Because he's got all these fast twitch fibers.
Yep. And then I use the term fiber with him, and he's like, Robin, when you say fiber, people will think you mean muscles. And he said it's not just the musculature, because movement like Stipe has, it begins with a thought. Right? As Stipe explodes to throw a punch, it begins in his brain. And the way that it travels through, it's neurological as well. He's a neurologically different athlete than he would be if you wanted him to perform well in round 3, 4, and 5. So now, Aaron, you're talking about Stipe wrestling him to the ground, fatiguing him in different ways, and if you can wrestle with him and put him on his back a time or two in rounds 1 or 2, now Francis Ngannou's ability to do what he does in 3, 4, and 5 start to disappear. So now we have multiple ways that Stipe can upset the whole world that would love to see. And right here at TSN, we are building pieces talking about how Francis Ngannou could be the next great heavyweight, the next great star.
But here's the thing about that,
though.
I don't think that does a disservice to Stipe Miocic, and I don't think that he should be offended by that. I think he should. I think he should, but he shouldn't be. And the reason why I say that is because if they put tons of momentum into this hype train of Francis Ngannou, and Stipe looks dominant in the fight, he's the guy.
I agree.
He's the guy. Nobody will doubt it. And if he's able to finish Francis Ngannou and also make it look easy, which he can do, which I personally think he can make it look easy if things go his way and he does the right thing and he's able to outthink a guy that's a little bit more green. Because keep in mind, when he first started training in MMA, Francis, Stipe was already 4 or 5 fights deep in the UFC. There's a steep learning curve for Francis to get to the level of experience that Stipe has. Now, that's something you can't teach. You can't teach experience. The only way you can teach experience is by acquiring experience from in-cage experiences. And frankly, Francis hasn't had a lot of them because he wins fights so quickly and so easily.
It's because of his physical dominance too, right? Like I look at Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar wasn't the most technical, but why is he so good and why is he so effective? Is because he has that raw power and aggression. And I look at it with fighters all the time. If you take someone like Francis Ngannou and if you try to make him overly technical, you could ruin him. You could kind of take away that explosiveness. You can take away those things. So sometimes that raw aggressive power, that just not overthinking, not getting over technical, could be in his advantage. If we start asking Nganno now to set up punches, maybe that one-punch power is not there. Guys are going to read his distance a little bit better. So I think if you overtrain him too technical, could be a problem for him.
And if you overtrain him to increase his endurance, you will undermine that explosiveness.
Yeah.
So this is a curse. Yeah. The thing why are we talking about Francis Nganno being so special? Because of the things we've seen him do, which are magical and mind-blowing. But that's also the curse that you're describing. How he cannot, as you said, he cannot buy or gain experience from any way other than acquiring it, which he is not acquiring it because he's knocking everybody out. The good and the bad comes with this. When I spoke to his coach, Ferdinand Lopez, who is from Cameroon as well, but trains him in France. Brilliant coach. You'll love him.
He came with him to the UFC Institute, right?
Yes,
okay. Yeah.
yes. And you'll love him when you get to talk to him because he's quite brilliant. You're a great coach and analyst, and you love the things. You'll love speaking to this man. Yeah. He talked about shaping Ngannou around his genetic gifts and also around, he'll do something which you would look at and most coaches would look at, and it's wrong. Yeah. He'll step a particular way and throw off balance in a particular way, and it's wrong. But it's not wrong because it works for him, and his coach will encourage him to pursue with curiosity these different things.
Yeah,
which is
very important.
He's special. There's no doubt about it. And to Aaron's point, there's no question that if Stipe, it's not wrong to show examples of him destroying Alistair Overeem and Arlovsky, factual moments in time that he really did, and say this guy is special. If he can do this one more time, he'll be an immense star in the sport. That's all true.
But what happens if he loses now?
Yes. And that's very possible because it's always possible. And
well, we also are guilty of having a recency effect in general. I mean, the last thing we saw of Ngannou was him knocking Alistair Overeem's head clean off his shoulders, pretty much. The last thing we saw of Stipе Miocis was when was it? Like last March?
Yeah.
We don't remember. Yeah. He dominated Junior Dos Santos, made him look like an amateur. Yep. Junior had no success in that fight. You think back to the fight with Stipe and Overeem. Overeem had some success in that fight. He dropped him. But then afterwards, Stipe got on top and smashed his head into the ground. We don't remember that. It was a long time ago.
True. And
so
momentum, you feel that. You feel excitement. You get caught up
again, and that's why I think Stipe should really be counting his blessings that there's finally a guy that people think can challenge him, and that they're putting a hype machine behind, because heavyweight is the baddest man on the planet. Yeah. And if you can beat the guy that people think is the guy, you're the guy.
Yeah. Sure.
I just think he wants a little bit more credit for what he's done, because I don't think anyone's really giving him a chance. And I mean, I'm going to come out and say it. I think he's going to win. I think Stipe is going to win this fight. That's my opinion.
I definitely see a Sunday morning where everybody is going, oh, you know, we bought into it too much. Because I like that term, recency effect. I mean, he just took this guy's head off, and he did it explosively. And if he does that, so let's just say that there's a parallel universe where this fight happens 100 times. And let's say only 9 of them he takes off Stipe's head. In those universes, he's the greatest thing ever. For all time, destroyer, nobody could ever beat him. In the other, let's say it's 40, let's say it's 90, doesn't matter how many it is. In the other one, he doesn't knock out Stipe in the first 2 or 3 minutes. He gets taken down a few times in rounds 1 and 2, and it becomes even easier in 3, 4, and 5, and Stipe finishes him in the 4th. And in that universe, everybody wakes up on Sunday and says, oh, you know, we were overhyped. But we weren't. That guy just about killed Alistair Overeem, one of the great, the great heavyweights of the game.
And I'll say this, regardless of outcome, if this fight goes more than 2 rounds, and Curtis Blaydes doesn't look great against Mark Hunt, or Mark Hunt wins that fight, you can see this fight again in a couple months.
Yeah.
I mean, even if Ngannou wins in the 3rd round and Stipe gives him a good fight, like, you could see an immediate rematch, no problem.
It might be an issue of having him to lower his talent a little bit, build himself up, but guaranteed, he's only, I think, been competing for less than 5 years or something like that. So, I mean, there is still a learning curve. There's still a learning curve. And I think the learning curve is going to be Stipe is going to use his IQ. It's going to be a lot of standing clinch wrestling and a lot of grinding, and we'll see.
The reason I called up Dr. Stu McGill to talk about the physiology and the neurology of these athletes is because we are very busy looking at Ngannou, and quite correctly saying that we've never seen an athlete like this. When you watch the way he moves, the way he is putting his core and his techniques and his athletic platform together in ways that break rules. You know, you see the way he puts these combinations together. He's actually generating force by doing things wrong. He's generating more force, and when I say wrong, there are air quotes around it, because it's not wrong when you take Overeem's head off. But that slide of the foot to land that shovel uppercut, there's no textbook in the world that would tell you to do that. And yet he generated more force by doing it because the human body is capable of it. So that's freak athlete. There's no doubt about it. The reason I wanted to talk to this neurologist and this genius about it is because we're forgetting that Stipe is also a freak athlete. He's a freak athlete. He's just a slightly different freak athlete. He has a lot of explosiveness, maybe more than most, just not quite as much as Ngannou. But he's a more general athlete. For a heavyweight, he's a middle distance runner. He can destroy you in rounds 4 and 5. He changes direction in unbelievable ways. And we've never seen one like this, and we've never seen two like this, which is why this fight's so cool.
Well, if you're playing the UFC game and you're going to create a character, you're going to want a character that can be explosive, but a character that can also fight the whole distance. So on paper, it's Stipe that has more of the tools and the options, right?
If somehow, and I asked, again, the world's foremost expert in this area, I asked him, if you saw Francis Ngannou able to do that, to fight the way he is in rounds 4 and 5, what would you think he'd say? I think I just saw something impossible. Because physically speaking, to create what he's creating, he by definition shouldn't be capable of that. Doesn't mean there are exceptions to every rule. But, I mean, I can't see him winning around 4 or around 5.